let's talk about choose your tools. Starting off with, what is 8 legs, 8 arms, and 8 eyes? 8 pirates, of course. Okay, so if you think this is the last bad pirate joke, you're wrong. So there's a trigger warning. If you have a problem with bad pirate jokes, now's the time to be leaving, because it's not like they're going to come all the time, but there's going to be a few to come. Okay, so choose your tools. So focus first up is, what's a tool? You know, this thing is about choose your tool. So what's a tool? The way I've defined a tool, at least for this presentation, but certainly what was in the back of my head when I was preparing this, is a tool is a transferable process with a purpose. Now, you see there's a picture of some tools that you'd find in an average workshop and so on. And you might think that these aren't processes, and you'd be wrong. Every time you pick up a tool in a workshop, there's a process you go through, and if you don't go through that process, that thing is useless. So if you think of the hammer, if you give the hammer to a dog or to the magpie out on your deck, they're not going to be able to do anything with it. There's no process, because they can't do the process. When you pick up a hammer and swing it, that's the process. The paintbrush, it did occur to me that a dog can use a paintbrush as a tool, because if it gets it in its mouth and gets you to chase after it, well, that's a tool for the dog, because it's getting what it's after. Its purpose is to get you to chase. But most of the time, those tools are only tools for the people who use them. Otherwise, they're just clutter. So a tool is a transferable process, and it has a purpose. So here are some common group leadership tools. Guarantee you've come across, well, some of you have come across one or more. So the one on the left, that's, I know it as flow charting, process mapping. You may know it under a different label. That the next one, that's my little graphic for sprint planning. The next one is for Kanban. And any idea what the one on the right is? It's a stand-up meeting, of course. So what I want you to think about, go to your chat line, and this is one of those times that I'm going to get you to do that trick of going to the chat line, and I want you to, now I'm hoping the chat line works. Yes, it does. Good. What I want you to do with the chat line is to, like I did before, type in one of your favorite tools, one or more of your favorite tools that you use with Teams, but don't hit enter until I tell you everybody's to hit enter. Okay? So everybody ready? Okay, so press enter. John, I'm wondering how you use a hammer as a team tool, but I'm sure you can. Role play, reactions, using the computer, yeah. Stickies. Stickies definitely one of my favorite. Disc, as in, I'm guessing that's DISC, the personality approach. There's a lot of different tools. Sorry, I've got to keep on clicking between screens here. There are many, like this isn't even close to how many tools there are. So like giving you a picture of a tool shop where there's lots of different tools available, but there are also an awful lot of different team tools. So this is just a small collection of the ones that I've got in Choose Your Tools. These are all icons that I've developed for that. And there are an awful lot of tools that are available. And well, really, this is only a fraction of the ones that I'm aware of. I have a list of over 300 group tools that you can use in teams. I've only got about just over 60 in Choose Your Tools. That's probably plenty. But there are some others that I've come across that's a really cool tool. There's a bit of a problem with that, though. If people don't learn when to use a tool, they'll actually overuse their favourites. So I was happy to see, Susanna, you put up role play. Really like role plays if they're done well. I have some friends, because of my background, who are into psychodrama, and they'll use psychodrama for everything. I know some people who will always just automatically go to Gantt charts. Most of us have had a boss who was just in love with Gantt charts, and everything had a Gantt chart on it. If you don't learn when to use a tool, you'll just overuse your favorites. And I mean, on that previous slide, you imagine someone who's only ever using wheelbarrows, or someone who's only ever using spanners, or someone who's only ever using hammers with eggs, or worse. If you overuse the tool, you start causing problems, and it gets teams frustrated, and it gets them confused. Sticky notes. I'm really glad someone put up sticky notes, because I've got a little graphic for sticky notes here for you. So how do you get leaders and facilitators to learn which tool to use? One of the bits of advice I can remember, and I love that, adjustable hammers, that's cool. One of the bits of advice that I'm embarrassed to say that I actually gave people, but I know I've seen other people give as well, is you'll get it eventually. You'll get on top of it. You'll figure out when to use and so on. And the fact is, people don't always get it. In fact, often they don't. They'll just go for their favorite because, well, that kind of worked, and they'll just keep on using it. And that's actually why I wrote Choose Your Tools. So a little bit of a story. Once upon a time, in a factory far, far away, up in North Queensland, actually, it was just outside of Home Hill. I had been working in the sugar mills up there, and I'd been training up group facilitators and training them up on different types of tools and processes. And after this training, they were coming out with, they had a couple of dozen different tools that they could use, and every one of them was saying to me afterwards, how do you know when to use which one? And I'd be going, just look at the room, it's obvious. And they kept asking me, how do you know when to use the tools? They didn't know when or where to use them. And as I say, I kept on giving them really unhelpful sorts of advice, like just look at the room, see what's going on in the room and respond to that. There was a problem that was occurring there. What that problem is, it's to do with the levels of knowledge. When people learn things, they progress through different levels of knowledge. So you may have come across this idea that at the most basic, people are at the level of unconscious ignorance. When someone is learning to drive a car, before someone's learning to drive a car, say you imagine a 10-year-old or even younger, they figure they can drive a car, particularly if they've been playing on a computer game and they're handling that computer car really well. They figure they can get behind the wheel of a car. One of my sons actually did this when he was about 7. Figured he could drive the car. Fortunately, it didn't have far to roll into the garage door, so it didn't cause a lot of damage. That's the level of unconscious incompetence. You have no idea what you don't know. The most famous example of unconscious incompetence I can think of would have to be Donald Trump, because he keeps on claiming he knows all sorts of things that he clearly doesn't know, and he's no idea. Well, it doesn't seem like he's got any idea what his limits are. So that's the first level of learning. The second level of learning is conscious incompetence. That's where, if you're learning to drive, if you're learning to drive and you have that first experience of being behind the wheel and it just goes wrong, that's conscious incompetence. You know you don't know. And that's a really deeply frustrating experience. That's what I'm calling a novice. The beginner is the one that hasn't even tried it. The next level, the next level is conscious competence. When someone's learning to drive, the level of conscious competence, you reach that around about the time you pass your driver's test. So at that point, you know everything you're doing in the car, and you can explain to people, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, everything that you're aware of. A few years back, I had the same sort of experience when I was learning to ride a motorbike. My 50th birthday present to myself was a motorcycle license. And for 5 or 6 years afterwards, everything I did on that bike was incredibly conscious. Because very aware if I make a mistake, well, I brake easily anyway. But that's conscious competence. After a while, though, you get to this point of unconscious competence. If you've been driving any length of time, you'll have had this experience of driving across a city and you've got no idea what you did on the way. And most people, when they first experience it, think that this is actually a really bad thing. This is dangerous, that they drove through all this traffic and no recollection. It was unconscious. This is actually a really good thing. When you get to that point, the reason you've got to that point is that you no longer have to think about what you're doing. It's so well practiced. It's a bit like, you imagine having to think about walking. There's a reason you don't. It's because it's so well practiced. You're unconsciously competent. Well, the problem that I had, going the wrong direction. The problem I had was that I had a bunch of novices that were consciously incompetent. They didn't know when to use a particular tool. And here am I at an expert level who's unconsciously competent. Now, when I'm saying I was at expert level, it's not that I am the best team leader or group facilitator you'll ever come across. I have trained a lot, but I tell you what, I can tell you a few people who are a lot better than me. I'm very impressed with them. But even by the time I was training this bunch, I was already at the point where I could no longer tell you how I decided that was the obvious thing to do. And so when they're asking me, when do you do something like a force field analysis, I'd be going, just look at the room, just look at the question, it's there. And of course, they weren't getting what I was talking about because I wasn't explaining myself at all. That's the problem you've got when you're dealing with experts, dealing with novices. Experts are often the worst people to be training people on something like that. And it's how do you bridge that gap between them? Because experts and novices talk past each other. Well, it was a bit like I had invited them into my workshop. By the way, this isn't my workshop. Mine's not that well equipped. In fact, no, I don't think it is quite as tidy as that. Anyway, but you imagine you've just invited someone into your workshop and they know all these tools, but how do they decide which tool to use? Well, how could you guide people through the workshop? How could I do that? Well, had a bright idea. I didn't think of the pirate at the time, but in hindsight, you need to focus on the pirate. Have you seen the pirate? See, there's a pirate in the workshop. The reason you need to focus on the pirate is because you need to ask, what would a pirate do? Pirates use maps to find treasure. So we need maps, and so do leaders need maps to find the right tools, particularly novice leaders. And that's the reason for choose your tools. Leaders and facilitators need a map. Next bad pirate joke for you. By the way, isn't that an impressive image? Why do pirates carry swords? A sword won't carry itself, me hearty. That's why. Okay, moving on. Structure of choose your tools. Okay, so the way I've structured this up for people is that there's a bit of an introduction with a background and guide to leadership and facilitation. So for some people, this will be new. For some people, no, you're going to know this backwards. Then there's a pathway, which is the map that I was talking about. It's a decision tree leading you to the right tool for your situation. I've also put together things like some categories that people can use that when they've got a rough idea of the type of tool that they need. But also, like most books, there's an index, so you can just go straight to the index. One of the things that I've done on each of the pages is there's a link to each of these so that you can go, yeah, actually, I do need to go to the pathway at this point, or I just need to go to the index, or could really do with going to the introduction. So if you see at the bottom of these pages, there's each of those icons, and the little link below that will actually take you to where you want to go. So this is what the introduction is like. This is what the pathway is like. And yes, I am skipping through this because I'm going to come back to some of these a little bit quicker, or a little bit more detail. This is what the categories are like and what the index is like. So let's explore one of the pathways. So the way this works, it is basically a decision tree for leaders and facilitators. First page, and if you click on that question mark or the link below the question mark with the X and Y, it's got first choice. Now, questions I want you to think about is what makes a good leader. I won't be getting you to respond to this at this point because I'm not wanting to keep you here till 8 o'clock. What I'll do is, if I was a facilitator, this is kind of the way that I'd be answering these questions. So first choice, you'll notice the first thing I'm saying is that people always work with information. And by the way, information, the way I'm talking about it within this context is basically anything that people can think or talk about. Your feelings are information. So we're wanting to find out something about leadership, and it might be that people have enough information about their situation. It might be that they're unsure if they've got enough information. When it comes to leadership, most people have got, and so I would guess certainly with the people in this group, most of you would have enough information to make decisions and take actions. So what you'd be wanting would be a common view of the next step you'll take. So it's about using information. So that the next step of that is, whoa, I've actually repeated that one. Sorry. I went onto the wrong link. I was working through this PowerPoint presentation today and somehow that one got past me. So on to finding information. In this case, people have enough information, but it's complex or confusing, and they want to see the patterns and systems in their information. So they know something about leadership, but they're a bit confused about how that works. So let's see what the patterns, so that'll be analysis and exploring connections. Oops. Analysis and explore connections, that's about trying to find how bits and pieces of information come together. It might be that people know about key events or activities, but don't know how they're connected. Or it might be that they're unsure what they already know about an issue or how their ideas are related to other. And with respect to leadership, we often don't have lots of detailed information about events, about leadership, but people do often want a good conceptual overview of the relationships between their observations and ideas about leadership. And leading on to what are the conceptual connections between those ideas. Not really wanting to work on how to control leadership, more understand what are the ideas we've got about it and see how they are connected, which is leading on to the logical connections and if people have already got their ideas, so the one down the bottom, if they have so many ideas and information they're difficult to comprehend, that's one thing. But the sort of workshop I'm thinking of, people haven't even explored the idea. I know they know a lot about leadership, but they just haven't explored their idea together. So we want some way of bringing their core concepts together to explore those ideas about an issue, which is leading to the tool concept mapping. Now, you might be thinking, this gets a little complicated. There's a reason for that. If it's feeling complicated to you, you're either an expert or a beginner or a novice. You haven't actually learned this, or you're an expert and you've actually forgotten how much you've learned. The people who are consciously making decisions, they're working through those steps every time consciously. So this is about making that decision making more visible in a way that experts forget how to do and novices have no idea how it works. That's why it looks complicated, and it's actually nowhere near as complicated as learning to drive a car. I had my own experiences of teaching people to drive a car. I promise you, it's not as complicated as learning to drive a car. So where that would lead is to, I've got a description of the tool, concept mapping. And yeah, you might notice got a little logo for it and so on. Have included for each of the tools some rough estimate of how long it's likely to take and skill level compared with other tools. Bit of an about thing, like with concept maps. One of the things I love about concept maps, they actually work very much the way your brain works. It's one thing connected to another, connected to another, connected to another. That's how concept maps work. Each of them, I give you some guidelines about how to use it. So in the case of concept maps, having a little bit of discussion from time to time is a good thing. Not a lot of discussion. Get it up on the board. And then I've got a detailed procedure, step, 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 how to work it through. And if you want, there are some variations, how you can play it up. If you've been playing with concept maps for a while, here's some of the things you can do. So that's the pathway. That's this little one down here with the question mark and the X and Y. So we're going to move now onto the categories. Oh, sorry, actually, before I did that, just thought it'd be worthwhile just giving you an example of what a concept map looks like. So that's what this is doing in here. This came from a website where they asked teacher librarians to write a concept map about leadership. Does this look like a teacher librarian concept map to you? It certainly does to me. I would expect including the words that they have used, and that's exactly what you want from a concept map. You want it in their language, but also reflected the way that they approach things. It's so neat and tidy. Most of the concept maps I do, they're not dog's breakfast, but they're messy. By the way, one of the things you can do with a concept map that's kind of fun, put some drawings onto it. Put some symbols on there. So there's a concept map. What we'll do, though, is I want you to think about one of those things, which of those would be most important. So with respect to concept maps, which of these ideas would be most important to you? So I'll get you to do that thing again of dropping something into the meeting chat. And enter now. And that didn't work at all. So if you type your idea coming from that concept map of which of those is most important for leadership, type it in, and then I'll get you to hit enter. So if you could all hit enter now. And that's okay. I know why it's not happening. It's because mine didn't scroll down. My chat screen did not scroll down. Thank you. So shared vision builds culture, learning culture, building relationships, motivates staff. Thank you. I'm going to play with something to do with building culture or learning culture. Okay. So let's have a look at that. How important is that idea? So I'm going to take you through a different way of getting to a tool if you've got a rough idea what you're looking for. So this is working off the tool categories. Again, we've got big high-level categories here, but we're going to focus on information gathering because we're wanting to get some idea of what people think's most important and about how they build culture. And that'll take you through to a page where you've got a bunch of tools, and the one that I'm going to focus on today in terms of how you decide what's the most important. Now, this is because I already know these tools, and it's just a bit of a reminder. If you didn't know these tools, you'd actually want to go through the decision tree. But of course, I already know basically I'm after an estimate, and I really don't want to be doing planning poker. That's just going to take too long. We're going to do median split rating. Okay. So median split rating, same sort of thing again. And that icon that I've got here is pretty much median split rating. That's pretty much the way it works. When I'm saying median, it's the middle value. It's not the mean, which is where you total everybody's ratings and divide by the number of people. The median is the middle value on how people within a group have rated something. So median split rating, it gives a rough idea of how the whole group thinks about something. Okay, so another pirate joke. What's a pirate's favorite doll? Barbie. Okay. What I'm going to get you to do now is to demonstrate or to trial out how you do median split rating. Because what you do with median split rating is you come up with a scale. It could be from 0 to 100. It could be from 0 to 10, which is what I've done here. You put a label at each end. So in this case, how good was that joke? Was it bad or was it great? So I want you to pull up your reactions. And what I'm going to get you to do is watch where I've got the mouse pointer. And when I get to the number that represents your reaction, I want you to put your reaction in at that point. So if you're saying it's worth a 6 because it's a really good joke, then when my mouse pointer gets to 6, that's when you give your reaction. So John, you've got a job to do for me here. What I want you to do for me is watch people's reactions, and when you reckon we've got roughly half the people in the room have given a reaction, that's, and I'm going, you're going to have to put your microphone on, going to have to unmute, because I'm going to need to hear you tell me we're halfway. Stop there.
But that's going to depend on how many people respond. So on the last one, we didn't have everyone respond.
Okay, so I'm going to, that's a good point. So could everybody give me a response now so we can see how many people are going to be responding? Now I'm going to ask you all to give the same response. Could you all do a thumbs up, please? Because it's going to make it really difficult for John if you don't give a thumbs up.
Okay.
Not in the chat line, sorry. No, this is the reactions down the bottom of your screen on Zoom. Yeah, Thanks, Scott.
Okay, so
So
how
you've
many?
got an idea of how many people have got it?
Okay, so I'm gonna assume about 8, I think.
Okay. So what I want you to do is watch. Tell me when people get to that. Yeah, roughly half of them put their hands up or given a thumbs up, and that's the point where I'll stop. Okay, so put your hand up as soon as I get to your number. Obviously, it's a great joke, isn't it? Because John didn't stop me until I got to 10. Okay, I'll do that again, but I won't do it quite so quickly.
Okay, but are people putting theirs in the? I'm looking out for it in the chat. So sorry, I should
Not
look
in the
out for it
chat.
in the.
No,
Okay.
on the screen where they've got their
Okay, we'll do.
Okay, so
Okay,
your
sorry.
reaction
Can you
not on the screen.
if you can do that again? Sorry, I was looking in the chat.
Okay, so no, I want you to follow this and put a thumbs up when it gets to your number.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, it wasn't that bad. Okay. The whole point of this, as you might have picked up, is just to demonstrate how you use median split rating. Now, if you're wanting to get a quick estimate from a group of people, median split rating is actually one of the best tools I've come across. It's nowhere near as precise as doing something like planning poker, but it's still pretty good. And it's far, far quicker. So if you want a quick estimate, this isn't too bad. So what we'll do is, we were talking about a leadership issue. Because I'm taking this session, I get to choose which leadership issue is on culture and leaders' role in managing and developing culture. So I want you to think about what number you would give from 0 unimportant to 10 extremely important for culture. And again, giving those reactions, the thumbs up on the screen where you've got the reactions, not on the meeting chat.
Yep, and I'll call out when it gets halfway.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
So about an 8.5. Can you see how well that one works? I say it's just a nice, neat little tool. I'm used to doing this. Actually, I've mostly done this within a room where I've had warm bodies in the room as opposed to talking to a screen. But you can adapt. This is one of those ones that adapts pretty well to an online presence. Okay, so that's the next way of going. This is the tool that came out of going through the categories. But there are times when it's actually a little bit simpler. So what's next is, well, say you really want to do something on leadership and culture, and you just want to design a workshop to address the issue. Well, there is an index, and lo and behold, there's a tool on how you design a workshop. And yes, I've got a very quick outline of how you might design a workshop to address that. So that's a fairly quick overview to how Choose Your Tools works. In overview, it's basically a thing to help leaders, because leaders often need help deciding how to guide their teams. That's basically when they need to choose your tools.
Hey Google, switch on all outlets.
What's that? I missed that.
I think Magnus has got his mute off.
Okay. So there's my cover again, but actually I thought I'd give you this one as well. And to really play it up, yes, I do actually have my eye patch. And if you really want to prove, just to prove I really am a pirate, I've even got my sword here. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you can see how this might be a useful tool for people as they're learning leadership. Oops. Oh, but actually, I'll come back to that. Oh. So thank you. Any comments or reactions at this point? Thank you.
It looks like a great tool.
Well, I hope so. The worst of it is that because it's a book and because I do an awful lot of writing, I'm always finding ways to edit. And as recently as last Sunday, just before it went online, it was still getting edited. I'm more than happy for people to point out, actually, there's a mistake there. By all means, quality improvement, total continuous improvement is something that I can do, and I can update it for you. But I actually think it's working okay at the moment.
Hey, Arthur, I might just say, yeah, from a novice perspective in terms of OD stuff, etc. Yeah, having that list of tools as a go-to and do a little bit of research on is going to be really, really helpful. So thank you.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Oh, didn't recognize you, Scott. Glad to hear your voice.
Kids everywhere, so I'm just keeping quiet.
Only available in ebook version at the moment. It will be becoming a what you call it, a paper-based version that will be available within the next week or so. And the price will go up then. At the moment, it's $11.99. Yes, you can purchase it. It's available at the moment. It's available through Amazon only. It will be available elsewhere. So you're going to be able to, within a week, you should be able to download it for a Kobo or for Apple. And in the medium term, hopefully you'll be able to get it through bookstores as well. It will be available, but if you want a print copy, you will be able to get one through Amazon, through Barnes & Noble over the next, within the next week. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, by the way, if you're hunting for it, if you just search on choose your tools, particularly with the exclamation mark, it'll go there. Somehow I managed to get onto a reasonably unusual title. Thank you, Susanna. Does anybody want some more pirate jokes? I've still got a couple more for you, including the best one. Okay, so why do pirates carry swords? Sword won't carry itself. How do pirates like to talk? Eye to eye. And this is my favorite. When do pirates get an eye patch? When they need to update their iPads. So particularly for Agile, I think that was a good one to finish on. And you got to love that eye patch. And finally, always be yourself. Unless you can be a pirate, then always be a pirate. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and your participation. Really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy it. And oh, thank you, Scott. Oh, and Craig. I didn't include that particular joke on there, Craig. So the bit about irate, sorry. I like that. Oh my God, I've opened an avalanche. Thank you. Well, I think we're kind of there, aren't we? Thanks, Scott.
So has anyone got any questions for Arthur? One question I was thinking is if we're looking at the what's the most unusual tool in your set, or the one that would be least expected?
Oh, unusual tools. That's an interesting question. I'll probably need to go back to, okay, whereabouts is it? I'm going to see if I can find where this is. Yep. I just want to go through to the index. And I couldn't remember what slide I'm on. One of the ones that did occur to me was critical incident. Critical incident is a brilliant technique for exploring what the hell went wrong, but some of you may actually be familiar with critical incidents. Is not analysis. I kind of like that one. This is a way of testing out ideas about what's causing a problem. Really does require a lot of being very rigorously figuring out when something happens and when it doesn't happen to sort out the causation. There was another, actually one that I love, fear setting. If you haven't come across fear setting, so think of goal setting, except the focus is entirely on everything that can go wrong. The idea behind this, like, it sounds really backwards, and it's one of the most useful tools, particularly if you're an anxious individual or you're unsure as to how well your system is going to work. Things are just going wrong in terms of people's motivation because they're seeing all the bad things that are going to happen. Instead of trying to calm them down, no, let's dive deep into all the fears and everything that could possibly go wrong, and then map out, are they realistic or not? And if they are realistic, well, what are you going to do in terms of countermeasures? How can you manage this? If this does happen, what's the worst that is as a consequence, and what can you do to deal with it? And it's a really ancient technique. It goes back to the Stoics. One of the biggest fans of it is, trying to remember the name, the 4-Hour Workweek boy, Ferriss. If you want a really good presentation on it, Tim Ferriss's presentation on fear setting, it's one of the most profound things I've ever seen on YouTube. It's brilliant. So that'd be a different one. Yeah, they're all a little bit weird in their own way and not. 20 statements is one that shouldn't work, or affinity analysis is one that shouldn't work, but they work beautifully.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Or
So which one of these have you found has had the most from your audiences when you've tried them?
Oh, it depends on the audience. Okay, if I've had a group that they have, say, a lot of conflict, or a different way, there's a lot of power differential. So like you've got the big bosses in the room, and you've got people who are at a much more junior level. One tool that I always pull out in a situation like that is nominal group technique. It's the reason why I pulled that one out is that it's a way of getting people's information on the table, despite the fact that there's that conflict or that there's the power differential. When you have a power differential, people are often very shy to share their ideas with others. With nominal group, if you do it well, people will share their wildest ideas because there's no comeback on them. There's a little bit of a tweak yet. You need to do it to make it really safe for people. In particular, you don't have people saying out loud what their ideas. You get them to submit it directly to you as the leader. Oh, good. Someone pulled up that TED Talk. Oh, it's a TED Talk. Yes, you're right. I thought it was on YouTube. But yeah, that presentation from Tim Ferriss, there were times in the middle of that presentation when I was literally tearing up. At the same time as going, wow, that's so good. He was actually the one who introduced me to peer setting. It's also a part of one approach to, as it happens, psychotherapy. Come from a very different direction, and it's made its way in there. But it's a really, really useful tool for planning. Really
looks like one
for dealing with motivation.
Looks like
What's
one
that?
I'm definitely gonna give that one a try. So
yeah,
looks like one that's I can think of some situations where that could be very useful.
Actually, another one that I really like using, particularly with team building, is History Trip. It's a way of creating a common history for a group of people. And it's surprising how much our sense of identity is tied up with our history. I'll give you some examples from Australia. There are some stories that everybody who's grown up in Australia knows these stories, and almost nobody from outside Australia is aware of them. So Ned Kelly, Don Bradman, Eureka Stockade almost, Gallipoli definitely. Some British people know about Gallipoli, but for them, Gallipoli was a sideshow. You grow up in Australia, those stories are ones we grow up with, and it's part of our history and helps define who we are as a people. If you grow up in Britain, it'll be things like 1066, Henry VIII, the Civil War. If you grow up in the United States, it'll be George Washington and the Revolutionary War. It'll be the Civil War. Every country, but every group of people, same thing, are defined by their stories. And History Trip is a great way of pulling those out and making them common stories. It's one of the more useful tools in team building that I've come across.
I see Eva had a question to say, which one is the most difficult to do online versus face-to-face?
Most difficult to do online.
Yeah, versus face-to-face or room.
You know, I don't think any of these you couldn't do online. I had thought about that as I was going through this, because like I was finishing this off over the last year or two, and post-COVID, you really need to have a very online focus. My own guess is a lot of it depends on how creative you're willing to be with the technology. That one that I was doing now about median split rating, I'd only ever seen that done within a room. And yeah, I think it works better, but a lot of these techniques work better face-to-face. I do think all of them use a bit of creativity. You're going to be able to run them online. Just having a look. Are there any that I'd be really worried about? Some of them could be a little awkward. Consultation by walking around might be a little awkward. That really is a tool for just consulting with people in an apparently casual way, even though you've got a very clear purpose. It's one of the major problems with online is that the incidental conversations are more difficult to organise. Whereas if you're just walking around the office, you can have those incidental conversations. But even then, there are ways of doing that. I think most of them are, well, all of them, I'd be able to do something like that online. And by the way, if you've got one that you're thinking, oh, geez, I wouldn't know how to do that, by all means, get in touch. Be more than happy to talk it through.
And I also noticed that a couple of them are around with the consent and consensus and so on. Made me think of some of the stuff that Nick Takavadi told me about. So, and it's great that we've got him in the room as well. So, Nick, I wonder if the art of hosting, or is there actually probably my question is there do some of those have some crossover with art of hosting?
Probably. Oh, actually, definitely. I don't think any of the, like, I have treated these like they're discrete, separate type things. But there's always, like, most of these I'd be able to combine this with that, this with that. It's like all of these are basically structured conversations. Nick, you had something you wanted to say.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say thank you, Arthur. One of the out of hosting practitioners, because this problem is everywhere with all tools, whether they be Agile or whatever. And the phrase he normally uses is, if you don't know how to choose your tool, you become a tooligan.
Yeah.
Yes,
I saw that. Thank you for that. I'm pleased that I'm not the only person using bad puns tonight. Craig is clearly a past master.
Just one thing, Arthur, maybe in terms of, because there's different types of problems, you know, some in the complex space, some in the simple, some in the complicated space. It seems it's a lot, you know, all these flaws and ways of choosing, you know, like in the diagrams, one of the diagrams when I was looking at it, I felt like I was looking at waterfall, you know, it was really going down with the different stages. How do you apply these techniques, especially in the complex space? Yeah, just for choosing your tools.
Okay, I didn't quite hear the question. I did hear you mention something about waterfall. I was trying to increase my volume while you were talking. Okay, so could you ask the question again? Oh God, what's happened there? I can't hear a thing now.
No, I think Nick, you've got on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did go on mute. There was one of your slides which looked like the image of it looked like a waterfall. I just took a screen capture of it. Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's just something that came up in me. Probably not necessarily a question, but maybe what it invoked in me was where in terms of application and choosing your tools, where does the difference come in, especially when you're in the complex space, in complex situations, where really you're in there because you don't know, even for the experts in that space, they are like they don't know as well. Which tools can help the experts in that space?
Which tools can help with mapping a complex space?
When you cease to become an expert because of the environment and the situation.
Okay.
So your expert is nullified by the complexity.
If you're looking at analyzing the environment, one of the tools that you might want to use is literally environment scanning. As a more structured version of that is SWOT analysis, where you strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. But environment scanning, if you're looking at the complexity, I'd go for something like environment scanning. If you're trying to come to grips with a complex situation, one of the things that I'd be inclined to do right up front is not even try, is instead try to get as many ideas about the situation as you can through something like 20 statements. 20 statements is a lovely tool for getting a lot of ideas out from people very, very quickly, and then following that up with something like an affinity analysis where you can categorize all those ideas so you can identify what are the key themes in this complexity. So that's one of the things I might do, but it depends on what the complex situation is. It might be something like, well, critical incident may be the thing that you want to use, or it might be you want to do something like identify what are the causal factors in the situation, in which case you might go off to a cause-effect diagram or a 5 whys. A lot of it depends on the particular type of complexity you're trying to deal with. So off the top of my head, I've just rattled off a bunch of different tools that you could use, but it would be one of those ones that let's talk through your specific situation in more detail, and then I can go, okay, here's the tool.
So I know that Nick sometimes works in very complex situations, for example, where the people coming to the conversation are perhaps locked into some sort of political disagreement with each other, where what you hear coming out of their mouth might not be what the actual truth is, or might be said in such a way that it's a whole political struggle, as opposed to Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the complexity of some of the stuff that you deal with is that it's where things can get very emotive, and that it's like a minefield that you've got to navigate through, and it's all about making sure that there's that inclusivity, and there's that, I don't know, the whole sort of like I don't know, bringing people together. So is that
Yeah, go on, Nick.
I think something came up as we were all talking. I think there's also the tool that we all already have anyway. You know, when you mentioned or scan the environment, which is scan and adapt your tool and adapt and move on, which is part of the practice anyway.
I must admit, for the sort of thing that you were just describing there, John, I would actually go for a tool that isn't on my list. That has me thinking, yeah, you probably need to run an open space. I make a mention of open space when I'm talking about workshops. There is a mention right at the end of the book, but open space, it probably deserves a book all on its own. And this is not something I would hand to a novice leader, because you're familiar with open space? Yeah,
Very much
wouldn't
so,
hand it,
especially in the art of.
I wouldn't hand it to a novice leader, because there's so much negotiation you need to do up front about identifying what are the boundaries, what is in the space and what's outside the space.
Mm. Cool. All right. So should we take a last question before we wrap up? Has anyone got any questions you'd like to ask Arthur? Right, Arthur, we might leave it there. Thank you so much again for showing this to us. It's really been quite a great journey. And for me, what I've really enjoyed about it is that you often get sort of lists of different tools, but I haven't seen the ability to be able to navigate through from the problem that you need to solve and how to get to the specific tool that's really going to help you solve that problem. So I think closing that gap is really valuable, and I hope to make use of it.
Cool. Thank you. And thank you to everybody for showing up, and I hope you enjoyed all the pirate jokes. I certainly liked yours, Craig. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for your investment.